being 20-something in the 90s was in many ways like being 20-something in 2026. Strangers with Kittens, Gen X stories from the least parented generation. Hi, welcome to Strangers with Kittens. Thanks for being here. I'm heading up to Boston on Sunday because my daughter's graduating next week from college. I've just been seeing a lot of articles about the job market and how bleak it is for college grads, and it's depressing, and I'm getting the same feeling that I had when I was graduating. And I feel like we've been here, right? Like as Gen Xers, we've been around this block. And so for kids, not kids, but people, ages whatever, 22 to 27, it's tough to feel like you've worked really hard and you figured out what you want to do, kinda, and you're coming out to a job market that isn't really interested, and that you might need to get a position with a company or in an industry even that doesn't interest you, wasn't what you planned. I wanted to be a film publicist. I was an English major with a international marketing minor. And I wanted to go into film PR, and it was really competitive. I mean, the job market was just awful. It was the Gulf War. The economy was bad because we were spending so much money on war, and for other reasons as well. But here we are again. We're spending, I think I read $2 billion a day on this war right now, and we can't afford it. And the economy is really suffering, and this is just the beginning. Um, who knows how long it's going to go on for? We're bleeding money, not to mention the human rights violations that we're committing. Not going to get into that right now, but I'm noticing that it's feeling a lot like 1991 around here. So for those of you that have kids, that have nieces, nephews, godchildren who are entering the job market, who are graduating, we might want to offer some advice. We've lived through this, right? And I feel like this is going to create it's like Gen X 2.0, right? It does have an effect on your mental state to feel like things are kind of hopeless, to feel like you're kind of powerless against the machine. Corporations had a lot of power back then, but not nearly as much as they have now. And they're controlling so much of our reality and certainly our economics. There are a lot of headlines that are bleak, but I wanted to sort of highlight some of the good things about what it was like to be a young adult in that climate and how it benefited us. It created a sense of community because we were all in it together. We were all like, oh my gosh, the adults in charge have really effed up the world for us. And what are we going to do? We had a lot of shared living situations, friends living together, sharing apartments. I feel like we didn't live with our parents as much back then, maybe because I think a couple of reasons. It wasn't as socially acceptable. Your peers would have kind of frowned on it, thinking like you're not ready to grow up or move on. Also, I think that people lived differently and maybe had more kids. And so as their younger kids were growing up, the older kids were sort of encouraged to get up and out of the nest, and there wasn't really a lot of room for them. They weren't going to have their own bedroom if they stayed at home. So there were a couple of reasons there why I feel like Gen X got up and out regardless of whether their job situation was ideal. But I wanted to be in publicity. There were no jobs. I mean, it's a very small world as it is. But I took a job. The people I babysat for, the dad worked for Toys R Us and put put in a good word for me in their advertising department. Now, when I say advertising, I'm not talking about like Mad Men cool, coming up with jingles and slogans and campaigns. I'm talking about like circulars in newspapers. This job was like so far away from what I wanted to be doing, but it was a job. And then I waitressed on the weekends and eventually moved in with a friend of mine to an apartment in Hoboken, which was really fun and was filled with young people because people didn't have a lot of money because none of us were really in jobs that we wanted to be in, and we certainly weren't getting paid much at all. I mean, that advertising job paid like $8 an hour, I think. This was like my, full-time college graduate job. It might be hard to remember what $8 an hour was back then, like how much money that was in terms of could you make like were you making a living? Could you support yourself? The answer is no, which is why I waitressed. But I had friends that I was waitressing with, and I eventually moved out and lived with a friend. And because we didn't have a lot of money, we had parties, we had get-togethers, we had dinners, we had each other over. We did things on the cheap because none of us were rolling in it. And that created a sense of, like I said, community, a sense of your friends being kind of like family. And I feel like the past couple of decades between technology and the pandemic, it's really frayed the threads of our society and created this loneliness epidemic. And I know they talk about it being a sort of, with men, but I think all of us have suffered in one way or another in that regard. And kids were growing up and developing through all that, which I can't even imagine how hard that was. I mean, I saw it, but I wasn't a kid. I didn't actually live it. It wasn't my lived experience. I was a parent through it. And I tried to minimize the effects as much as I could, but there was only so much any of us could do. Now things are tough again, and the job market is lousy, and throw in AI and whatever that's going to do to our existence, I don't know, and I don't envy young people for having to grow up with that. But those are the scary things. The good things are that you're all in this together and sticking together and helping each other and living together and having dinners and hanging out at a coffee place or whatever that doesn't cost a fortune. You don't have to go get $26 cocktails when you want to get together with friends. You can have a few friends over, or you can go somewhere much cheaper. You can pack a meal and have a picnic somewhere. I used to do that all the time. So there was a lot that came out of being a young person in the 90s dealing with what we were dealing with. In the middle of a war, the economy was lousy. We had, I mean, I didn't vote for Bush and I didn't like him, but I would give my left pinky toe to have him be president now. So yes, it's worse for sure. And there are a lot of variables, and there's a lot that we can't speak to because we aren't living in, we weren't 20 somethings in these times. But think that young people will start coming together more and have IRL experiences together and do stuff on the cheap because it's necessary, and you can't afford every streaming service, and you can't afford to Netflix and chill every night. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could chip in for all those subscriptions with roommates, but I do think that this could be an opportunity for young people to come together and have more of a life that feels connected and shared and supported by your peers. So when you're looking at these headlines that are really bleak, and I know they are, and I'm not trying to Pollyanna us through any of it, I'm just saying there are other things that are also true that aren't terrible. And being 20 something in the 90s was in many ways like being 20 something in 2026. And yeah, there are things that are different and there are things that are unknown and scary, but this is an opportunity too. This is an opportunity for this generation, Gen Z, to really pull together, to kind of buck the system and stop feeding it. Like all these subscriptions that we have that just feed these huge corporations that are, I don't know, cannibalizing each other, and movie studios eating other movie studios, and less diversity in voices, in representation, in points of view. Maybe you go rogue and just do your own thing and create something new, old and new. You know what I mean? Like, go analog, make movies independently, and figure out a way with your big brains that you've you've grown up on all this technology. Figure out a way to get it to people. But most of all, connect with each other. Connect with people your age. Network, IRL. Smile, shake hands, talk about what you're interested in, what you loved about what you studied, w- what you think is possible. Ignite that spark between two humans that doesn't happen through any social media platform. That's my 2 cents. Yeah, it's not going to be easy, but maybe you end up doing something totally off the beaten path. Maybe you create your own thing. Maybe you start your own business. I don't know, but I do know that this all feels like deja vu, and we got through it. And yeah, we weren't maybe as successful as Gen Xers who had parents that were boomers. Boomers did great. They had pensions and insurance and all those things that don't exist anymore or don't exist the way they used to. I really feel like this is the beginning of a revolution. I really hope that what we learned as Gen Xers and the knocks that we took and the things that we tried to fight for, like socialized medicine, maybe will come into being with Gen Zers voting and being out in the world and seeing how messed up it is. I don't know. I'm hopeful, and I want to pass that along to young people because feeling defeated never got anybody anywhere. So carve your own path, make your own way, ask the young people in your life what you can do to help them, even if it's just telling them about your experience, because they see that you're here now, and that will make them feel like, all right, like you're okay, so maybe it'll be okay. Pass on some wisdom with a healthy dose of Gen X cynicism. I mean, we're not BSing anybody. And also, last week my guest, Kimmy Berlin, talked about how we measure success, and that we sort of grew up thinking that success is getting married, having X amount of children, making this much money, buying a house, driving a certain car, all of these things. And I think Gen X really was the first generation to not do as well as their parents. I mean, by and large, and have to really evaluate like what is success to me. And I feel like that's kind of coming around again. And we've got some wisdom to offer. So offer it. Find a young person that you can connect with and talk to and let them know that, you know what? These moments can offer opportunity if you look hard enough, and to kind of reach out more and network with your peers and just support your peers and get an apartment with 3 friends or whatever you need to do. And you might need to take a weird job, like a weird cater waitering job like I did. Um, and don't feel like that's a failure simply because you graduated with a degree and you're not doing what you thought you'd be doing. That wasn't a waste. You have an education. You got to study things you were interested in, hopefully, and it shaped you as a human being. And you're successful in many ways because of that. So don't measure your worth by whether or not you have a job that correlates with what you studied. Don't connect it to how much you're making. Don't get hung up on having to take a second job if you need to make ends meet. You're young. This is the time. You'll make friends there. You'll have experiences there that are interesting. That's the way it was for us Gen Xers. That's the way it was in the 90s. We were scrappy. And it gave us great experiences and great stories now. And maybe things aren't going to be as easy as they have been in the past. And that's okay, because you can do hard things. We did, we do. So don't get discouraged. And Gen Xers, pass on your hard-earned wisdom. Reach out a little bit. We're not great about that. We had to do everything ourselves, and it made us really strong. But I think it also made us sometimes isolated, and also getting in trouble for everything all the time growing up really makes you not want to talk about a lot of things. When your hand gets slapped over and over again, you kind of stop reaching out. And for me, I have to push myself. So push yourselves. Reach out. That's it for me. I hope you have a great week. I'll be up in Boston watching my daughter graduate, which I'm really excited and grateful for. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you soon. If you like the show, please rate, review, and share on social media. Strangers with Kittens is produced by Ashley Aker and recorded in front of a live audience of dogs.